In the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, Desmond grew up with his crew, including his brother Hal. His super-religious mom, Bertha, and his dad, Tom, who used to be a soldier, were all part of his life. One afternoon, a fight between Desmond and Hal got out of hand, and Desmond, just trying to protect himself, almost killed his brother with a brick. Hal made it, but that crazy, violent moment really shook Desmond up. His mom's words just made him feel worse when she told him what he did was the worst sin ever. 15 years later, while helping out at the local church, Desmond saw a guy get into a car wreck on the street. Without even thinking twice, he ran over to help, using his belt to stop the bleeding like a tourniquet. Then he took the hurt guy to the hospital, where the doctor totally praised his quick thinking, telling him he just saved a life. Watching the nurses and doctor do their thing, Desmond felt something click inside him. He'd always dreamed of being a doctor but never got the right schooling for it. That same day, he met a nurse named Dorothy and was instantly smitten. Desperate for a reason to chat her up, he even agreed to donate blood right then and there. The next day, he went back to the hospital, dressed sharp, ready to charm Dorothy and ask her out. Their first date went pretty well, even though Desmond was still figuring out how to talk to women. But Dorothy was a little surprised when he kissed her without warning. She would have liked it better if he'd asked first. Despite that awkward moment, their relationship really took off. Dorothy shared medical books with him, helping him learn more about medicine. A few days later, Hal totally shocked the family by saying he'd joined the army to fight in World War II. He waited until it was a done deal before telling them, knowing they'd freak out. And he was right. Bertha hated the idea because taking a life went against God's rules, and seeing Hal in uniform brought back painful memories for Tom. Unable to handle it, Tom asked his son to leave the room. Not long after, Desmond told Dorothy he was planning to enlist too, but as a medic. "I can't stay here while all them go fight for me." Wanting to make things right before he left, he proposed to Dorothy and she said yes. "So are you going to ask me to marry you or what?" "Well, I'm asking you with all my heart." "And then, so you marry me then?" "Yes." They set a date for their wedding, planning to get hitched when he got his first leave. Before heading off, Desmond visited his dad, who was at the cemetery, standing by the graves of his buddies who died. With a bitter tone, Tom talked about how dumb they were to believe in glory and war. He admitted he didn't want to bury his sons too, and didn't have much hope that Desmond could survive, armed with nothing but his beliefs. The day Desmond left for training at Fort Jackson, Dorothy gave him a Bible with her picture inside, a little something to remember her and his faith by as he headed into the unknown. When he got to Fort Jackson, Desmond met his fellow privates, including Smitty, who jokingly called him two-wheeler while flipping a knife around. "Hey!" Their assigned drills, Sergeant Howell made a dramatic entrance, scaring everyone with a super loud scream. That sudden shock made Smitty drop his knife right on his own foot, while another private, who was still naked, didn't even have time to get dressed. Sergeant Howell was the definition of a military guy. Loud, aggressive, and quick to insult every soldier based on how they looked. Desmond, though, found his over-the-top antics kind of funny. As for the private who didn't get dressed in time, he got punished by having to start training completely naked. During basic training, Desmond had a tough time with knots. "What do we got here, Doss? One for each titty." But growing up in the mountains gave him an edge on the obstacle course, letting him do really well. The real trouble started when they moved on to handling weapons, and Desmond flat out refused to pick up a rifle. Howell immediately dragged Desmond to Captain Glover's office, where Desmond explained he'd been told he wouldn't have to carry weapons and shouldn't have been put in an infantry unit in the first place. He clarified that, as a Seventh-day Adventist, he couldn't work on Saturdays because it was his Sabbath. Glover thought the whole thing was a joke, convinced Desmond couldn't be trusted in battle if he wouldn't follow basic orders. He sent him for a Section 8 psychiatric evaluation, figuring he must be crazy. Later, Howell talked to the other privates in the most stuck-up way possible, telling them about Desmond's refusal to fight. He made it clear Desmond couldn't be relied on in combat. That night, right before lights out, Smitty tried to mess with Desmond by grabbing his Bible, hoping to get him to fight. But Desmond stayed cool, just politely asking for it back with a please, refusing to react to the taunt. The next day, Desmond had his psychiatric evaluation. He explained he didn't hear voices or have any weird ideas. He was totally aware of how he was different, but was just a guy with strong faith, not a nutjob. The doctor decided that Desmond was completely sane and didn't qualify for a Section 8 discharge. By law, This meant he could keep serving as a combat medic as long as he met all the other training requirements. However, Captain Glover still wanted him gone. Since he couldn't legally kick him out, he told Howell to make Desmond's life miserable. From then on, Desmond got all the worst jobs, including scrubbing toilets. Howell also took things further by kicking Desmond's bed one morning, making it clear to the whole barracks that no one was getting their planned weekend leave and heavily implying it was all Desmond's fault. The anger boiled over, and that night, the other privates ganged up on Desmond, beating him badly. Smitty, watching from afar, wondered why Desmond bothered staying. The next morning, Howell saw Desmond covered in bruises and for the first time seemed to actually care. He told Desmond to leave for his own good, but Desmond refused, determined to stick to his beliefs no matter what. Desmond wouldn't name the guys who beat him, nor did he even say he was attacked. Instead, he insisted his bruises were from an accident. When the unit finished training, the soldiers got leave, except for Desmond, who was arrested for disobeying orders. "And you will spend the duration of the war in a military prison." "I can, sir. I'm not asking you, Private." Meanwhile, Dorothy waited for him at the altar, but deep down, she knew something bad must have happened. Desmond would never ditch her like that. Locked in his cell, Desmond had a moment where he almost broke down, but when Captain Glover visited, he stayed calm. Glover offered him a way out. If Desmond said he was guilty, he could be let go without official charges. But Desmond refused, sticking firm to what he believed. Dorothy later visited him, begging him to drop his stubbornness and just finish the right training. She reminded him that shooting a rifle didn't necessarily mean killing. Still, Desmond didn't budge. Seeing no other choice, Dorothy called Tom and Bertha, desperate to find another way to help him. That night, Desmond's sleep was filled with nightmares. Memories of the day he confronted his dad as he beat his mom, the horror of grabbing the gun away from him. The next morning, Tom arrived at Fort Jackson wearing his old uniform, covered in all his medals. Without hesitation, he demanded to talk to his old commanding officer, who was now a brigadier general. At Desmond's court-martial, he kept saying he was not guilty. Just as he was about to be sentenced, Tom burst into the courtroom carrying a letter from the brigadier general. The letter reminded everyone that the right to be a conscientious objector was protected by the U.S. Constitution. Not wanting to risk a fight with Congress, the court had no choice but to drop the case. Desmond was cleared of all charges and allowed to start training as a combat medic. "Private D, you are free to run into the hellfire of battle without a single weapon to protect yourself." To celebrate his hard-won victory, Desmond and Dorothy finally got married, spending their first night together as husband and wife. By 1945, Desmond's 77th Division was sent to Okinawa, right into the Pacific Theater of War. The moment they got there, they saw a terrible sight, piles of bodies being hauled away like trash. The harsh truth hit them. They were there to replace the guys who died before them. The remaining survivors of the 96th Division joined up with Glover's unit, and Desmond met 2 other medics. It was here that they learned about Ma Escarment, which the soldiers called Hacksaw Ridge. The Americans had tried to take it 6 times, but each time the Japanese forces had pushed them back with incredible precision. The enemy purposely targeted the wounded, so Desmond had to take off his Red Cross patch to avoid being a target. He also got a new helmet for extra protection. A few days later, the unit reached Hacksaw Ridge. Getting this spot was super important. Whoever controlled Okinawa controlled Japan itself. The U.S. Navy started the attack, bombing enemy positions to weaken the Japanese defenses. As the battlefield exploded with bombs and smoke, Glover's unit seized the moment and climbed the ridge, ready for a fight. The battle was nothing short of brutal, with both sides taking huge losses, but Desmond never gave up. He kept saving as many guys as he could, even those usually left behind. Just breathe, just breathe. Considered missing or beyond hope. Several times, Japanese soldiers got dangerously close to catching him, but Smitty fought like crazy, killing them all to protect Desmond no matter what. After long hours of brutal fighting, night fell, and the American unit decided to dig in and set up camp, holding their spot with plans to finish clearing the ridge in the morning. Howell reminded everyone that going out alone was too risky, so they should even go to the bathroom in their foxholes instead of risking getting exposed. But Desmond, not willing to leave any wounded behind, insisted on looking for survivors. "Where the hell you going, Doss? Still more wounded out there, Sarge." "I'll go with him." Be smart, keep your ears down. Desmond managed to bring back a couple of injured soldiers before he and Smitty took cover in a foxhole. By now, Smitty's attitude toward Desmond had totally changed. After seeing him in action, he had a ton of respect for him. The two even joked around a bit, their bond made stronger by the battlefield. When Desmond fell asleep, he had a nightmare. Enemy soldiers stormed their foxhole and killed both of them. He woke up almost having a breakdown and told Smitty about his dream, who was shocked to realize that Desmond didn't even pick up a weapon in his own dream. As they waited for dawn, Desmond finally opened up about how much he hated guns. One night, after years of watching his drunk dad beat his mom, he'd finally had enough. He confronted Tom, wrestling a gun out of his hands and pointing it at him. But in that moment, instead of feeling powerful, Desmond saw his dad collapse to his knees in tears. It felt like he'd killed him in his heart. That day, he swore to God he'd never touch a weapon again. In return, Smitty shared a bit of his own past. He never knew his dad, and his mom dumped him at an orphanage when he was a kid. At dawn, the Japanese army launched a fierce counterattack, catching the Americans off guard as they tried to wake up. Howell immediately ordered a retreat. The naval fleet provided cover, but the chaos was overwhelming. In the middle of it, Smitty was fatally wounded before Desmond could carry him to safety. With no other choice, the American forces had to retreat down the ridge, but Desmond didn't follow. He heard the cries of wounded men left behind and felt a divine push to help them. Captain Glover, leading the retreat, gathered the remaining survivors and left behind just a couple of soldiers to watch the battlefield. Ignoring his own safety, Desmond raced through the chaos, saving as many injured soldiers as he could. Using a rope, he carefully lowered them down the ridge one by one. Hours passed, and Glover, realizing what was going on, called in artillery strikes to give Desmond cover and save more lives. However, this also exposed Howell, Desmond, and the remaining soldiers, making them visible and easy targets for the Japanese forces. But even this wasn't enough to make Desmond quit. Jeeps arrived to pick up the wounded soldiers he lowered down the ridge, but he kept going, even as Japanese troops got dangerously close. Moments later, he found an injured soldier and quickly buried him under the dirt before covering himself with a dead body to stay hidden. The trick worked. The Japanese walked right by without noticing them, letting Desmond safely get the wounded soldier and continue his mission. Meanwhile, Glover desperately begged his superiors for backup, but they kept hesitating. As the battle raged on, Desmond made one last daring drop down the ridge. This time, though, the enemy spotted him. Running away under heavy fire, Desmond stumbled into a Japanese tunnel. There, he found a fallen enemy soldier who had taken his own life as a final act of honor. The tunnel was used as a secret path for enemy movement, forcing Desmond to stay hidden as Japanese soldiers crossed through. He stayed undetected until he bumped into a wounded Japanese soldier. Staying true to his beliefs as a medic, Desmond gave him morphine and bandaged the guy's wounds, refusing to see him as an enemy. By the time he got out of the tunnel, night had fallen, but darkness didn't stop him. Desmond kept rescuing soldiers, his hands torn and bleeding, ignoring the pain as he prayed for strength. He even ended up lowering several wounded Japanese soldiers along with his own men. At dawn, Glover was speechless when he saw dozens of injured men being brought in from the battlefield. One of the rescued soldiers finally told him the truth. The same guy they all once called a coward had done it alone. Meanwhile, Desmond ran into Howell and another soldier, both hurt but alive. "You okay here for a while?" "Yeah, get out of here." After carrying the wounded private to safety, he immediately went back for his sergeant. A Japanese sniper aimed at him and fired, but his helmet miraculously bounced the bullet away, saving his life. Howell still had a few bullets left in his rifle, so Desmond made a bold move. He purposely ran, getting the sniper's attention. The sniper fired again, showing his position, which let Howell take him down with a good shot. With the immediate danger gone, Desmond started dragging Howell to safety. As they retreated, Japanese soldiers spotted them and chased them. Howell fired back, covering their escape while Desmond pushed forward, refusing to leave his sergeant behind. As soon as Howell reached the bottom of the ridge, Desmond made his own daring leap to safety. Japanese soldiers peered over the edge, ready to finish him off, but before they could fire, Glover and his men took them down, having arrived just in time to help the last survivors. Desmond was greeted with the highest respect and was immediately taken to the field hospital. There, he got the heartbreaking news that the other medic on the team didn't make it. Later, Glover visited him, offering a heartfelt apology for not believing in him. He admitted that Desmond had done more for their country than anyone else. Glover then explained that they would go back to Hacksaw Ridge the next day, Saturday. He acknowledged that it was Desmond's Sabbath and told him he'd respect his decision if he chose to observe it instead of joining them. Desmond, however, agreed to go. The entire unit waited for him to finish his prayers before starting the attack. This time, the Americans caught the Japanese off guard with long-awaited reinforcements and the tunnel Desmond had found earlier. The battle quickly turned in their favor. At one point, a small group of Japanese soldiers stepped forward, waving a white flag as if they were giving up. But it was a trick. They got close enough to throw a bunch of grenades at the Americans. The enemy soldiers were shot down right away, but Desmond still got hurt trying to bat away a grenade to save his team. As the battle kept raging, the other soldiers carried Desmond on a stretcher, rushing him off the battlefield. Only when they realized he dropped something did they stop: his Bible. They grabbed it and put it back in his hands before continuing. The Americans finally won, securing Hacksaw Ridge after the Japanese unit leader took his own life in a ritual seppuku to make up for their failure. In real life, Desmond Doss saved 75 wounded soldiers from the battlefield at Hacksaw Ridge. He became the first conscientious objector to get the Medal of Honor, the highest award for being brave under fire in the United States. Desmond and Dorothy stayed married until she passed away in 1991. Even with all his heroism, he never looked for praise, always giving credit to his faith and believing that the real heroes were the ones who never came home. He passed away in 2006 when he was 87.